Welcome to Authentic Energy, a podcast dedicated to getting to the bottom of what it means to be your true, authentic self at work. I am your host, Wendy Brand. Let's take this learning journey together as I meet with guests weekly. Whether you are a leader or individual contributor, a teacher or a nurse, we'll share conversations and stories that highlight meaningful connections, self-awareness, a sense of belonging, and all the components necessary to create a workplace where you can show up in your authentic energy. Welcome back to Authentic Energy. Last week, Whitney and I talked about having the desire to change. And we assigned some homework. Hopefully you've thought about what change you may want to make and tried it on for size, asking yourself, what if? What would it look like if I made this change? This week, Whitney Kinservik and I tackle our second episode in the SO series by addressing the importance of assessing risk before making a change. We'll walk you through a few examples and then, of course, assign some homework. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome back to Authentic Energy with Whitney, my co-host for the SO series. Whitney, How are you?
I'm doing great. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Me too. I think we had a great first episode with this SO series. Just as a refresher, if you haven't listened to the first episode, you should probably go back and listen to it. But just to kind of recap what we're talking about here in the Seed series, which you definitely need to listen to, that's really about creating awareness. And for those of you change management nerds like me, if you follow the ADKAR methodology at all, it's ProSize ADKAR change management framework, it really kind of defines that change curve. And first you have to have awareness. So when we're talking about going through a change curve ourselves, we spent the Seed series talking about awareness. How do you have that awareness of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, so that you can take action in the direction you want to? The next step in that change process is desire. You have to have the desire to change. So you've got the awareness, then you have the desire, which is where our focus was last week in that episode 1 of the SO series, having the desire to make a change, big or small. And then the next few steps are having the knowledge on what it's going to take to get through that change, the ability. So what are the skills that you need in order to make that change? And then reinforcement. So how do we make sure that we don't implement a new lifestyle or implement a change and then slide backwards to an old way of being? So that's the change curve in a nutshell. And I think it really helps kind of explain where we're focused in this series. We've got the Seed series and awareness. For the SO series, we're really living in that desire, knowledge, and ability. And then we're going to talk about a growth series when we talk about reinforcement part of the change curve. Does that sound right?
That sounds exactly right. I think with today's episode focusing on risk, I think it brings us into the full circle of that desire, not just what do you want, but what will it take to get it. And so it kind of rounds us out as we start to really think about change. So should we change? So it more emotionally for us non-nerds, and I don't really understand all the HR speak. It's like I felt friction and I know that something has to give. I don't know what that is yet. And last time we kind of what ifed it. So that was our homework. Like, what if? And what are the positives of that? If I do this, what is my gain? And today we're going to talk about the other side of that, which is like, what will it take? So the risk side of it.
Yes. I'm excited to talk about this piece. And it does, just the word risk to me feels like looking at the negative side of it. But I think it's a must. I mean, I think it's really part of what we need to do in order to see both sides, right? It's not all, it may not be all roses and it may not be easy to get there, but what's the risk of doing it or not doing it?
I really like that perspective because I agree with you. I don't think it's negative. I think of it as responsible and really, so I view it as cost. And that's probably my business background is I'm thinking as an ROI. So what's my risk and reward? And so what does it cost me to do it? And what does it cost me not to? So I really see the full picture of the destination of desire and what it would take to get there, or not.
Yeah.
If I choose not to, what do I give up by not doing it?
Yeah. And so maybe we think of a change that we want to make and the risk of not doing it or not doing it. I recently had a coaching session with my peer coach. And one of the things I want to change is I want to start waking up at 5 a.m. Now that sounds really early. And
like, why?
And my coach asked me that. Why, what is it about 5 a.m.? And I said, I need to get these things done and these things done. And he said, well, it sounds like you've got enough time to get those things done. What is it really? And I said, I just kind of thought about it for a second. And really, to me, the person that I want to become, she gets up at 5 a.m. She gets up at 5. She does her meditation. She has her matcha. She goes for a walk. So anyway, it's a small change for some. It's going to probably be a pretty big feat for me, but it's who I want to be. So what's the risk of that? What's the risk of doing it versus not doing it? I think part of understanding what the risks are or aren't, that might also uncover some limiting beliefs that I may have about the possibility of getting up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I was sitting here like bated breath trying to look, what were you going to say? Like, so what is the risk of doing that?
Well, what my beliefs and thoughts are telling me is that I'll be tired. I'll be too tired. I'll be tired all day long. But I think that's false. I have maybe felt that way in the past if I've had to get up for an early flight. Also, there's something that was negative in the past that was tied to 5 a.m. And that is being in my corporate job. When my alarm went off at 5 a.m., I had to get up at 5 a.m. just to get out the door in time to make it at work. We had to be there by 8, but as a leader, we had to be there a little bit earlier. And so I didn't have a choice. I had to get up at 5 a.m. And so I've spent the last year unwinding some of those behaviors that I created for myself in that corporate environment. And so now to put that back in, there's a little bit of it feels risk, it feels like it might have a negative impact on me.
From a self-care perspective.
Yes.
Okay. I see that. So what's the risk of not doing it?
Well, it's the reason I'm wanting to do it is to make sure that I bake in that self-care piece, that I'm getting my meditation, that I'm having my matcha and sitting for a little bit quietly, that I'm having a good breakfast, that I'm having some conversation with my husband in the morning, because otherwise I would just start working. I mean, I just could work all the time, but I've got to build that in. And so that for me it's the opposite of taking away from my self-care. It's building it in.
So when you think that through and articulate those two things, how do you feel now?
I'm trying it in the morning. I am definitely, that's who I want to be. And so I think I have to try it in order to feel the possibilities.
So this is such a fantastic illustration because I think so many of us go through this mental exercise and they're competing beliefs about the same thing. So if I do this, I harm my self-care. And if I don't do this, I harm my self-care. So like the outcome of either possibility was the same. And so how did you then take that information and complete your risk analysis?
Well, I think what my coach said to me was, it sounds to me, he was saying like, that was my Wendy 1.0. And then getting up for this new way at 5 a.m. is my Wendy. It's part of becoming my 2.0. And he said, your 1.0 version of you is fighting you really hard to stay in the status quo because it doesn't want you to become Wendy 2.0. And so in order to let go of that 1.0, you're going to have to embrace the Wendy 2.0.
So what I love about what you just said is change is hard. It's simple. You've just articulated the advantage. If I go and do this, then I will change. And that there is a fear of wrecking my self-care. If I don't do it and I choose to change, there's a risk that I hurt my self-care. The deal breaker really is, do I want to keep being the person I am, or do I want to evolve to the state that I want to be? And I think sometimes that clarity escapes us, right? We just feel the fear or the tension of the change. And so being able to separate that and understand that this fear is related to my current state and this one's related to my future state, and I desire my future state, and therefore I can accept. Now I know what I have to accept as the risk in order to get there. And so it was a really good illustration. I mean, we don't often break all that down in our minds, right? But it was such a good illustration because you really can see the fear is the same on both sides. It's just, where do you want to go?
Yeah. I'm getting up at 5 a.m. tomorrow.
I love it. And you're going to crush it. You're going to be like, 5 a.m. is the best. Why wasn't I doing this all along?
Yeah. Is there anything that's come up for you recently that you were feeling that friction or a persistent gnawing for change?
Yeah, change can come in a lot of different varieties. And I think oftentimes when we think about coaching and we think about change, we think about career change or relationship change or some sort of life change, but it could be more nuanced than that. It could be that you don't have that kind of choice, that you are sitting in your job and you do not have the capacity to change, or you don't really want to change that much. You just want the situation that you're in to be, I'm going to say the word better, which is a little judgmental, but you want to feel better about the way that your day to day goes. And so that change might just be that you want your performance to improve, or you want your attitude to improve. You want your day-to-day interactions to improve, which is a little bit different than like, I want a different relationship. So it could be a nuanced move. And so I read an article today, which had something to do with Mark Cuban saying, like, in any situation that you're in, be great. Mm. And if you really unpack that, like, that is actually a change. So what does great mean to me? What is required in order for that to be true? And really kind of breaking down that nuance, I think is the same type of exercise that you just went through, which is, well, what would it cost me to continue doing what I'm doing, which is, say, be average or be above average? And what's the distance between average and great? And so being able to define that specific goal, I think, is really powerful in this exercise. And so what's the cost, or what is actually getting there? What is there? What is the there? And then what is the cost to get there? And then what's the cost of not getting there? And for me, as I thought about be great, the cost of not being great, however I define that, is that I actually don't feel very good about what I am doing. I don't focus on me and my performance, and rather I focus on the things around me and why I'm not able to be great. And so I'm not, like, maybe I'm focused on a coworker and how come they always get promoted, or I'm focused on a friend who's like, how come they're always happy in that relationship, or how come it's so easy for them in social situations, or why is it, so you tend to get off on these little tiny rabbit chases instead of focusing on you and being like, this is a really great experience that I'm having right now. Why is, how could I make it better? Or what do I want to get out of this moment? And so focusing back on self and what I can control is different than what is out of my control.
So I think we have some homework.
I love homework.
I think we need to do a risk assessment.
So yes, I love it. Let's do a risk assessment. So down two lanes. The first one being the as is. So what is your current state and what is the risk of doing nothing? So if I stay where I am and I do nothing, what's my risk? And the other one is I pursue my what if. So I'm inspired by a what if and I'm going to go for it. What's my risk? And am I willing to do that? So we'll worry about that next week. But right now, what's my risk for my what if?
What's the cost if I change? And what's the cost if I don't change? I love it.
Yep. Me too.
Awesome. Okay, Whitney, this was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. See you soon.
All right. See you next time.
I hope you got something out of this episode. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, going through a change curve includes having awareness of the need to change, the desire to change, knowledge of how to make the change, the skills and ability to perform in the new changed state, and some type of reinforcement to keep you from backsliding into old ways of doing things. Number 2, making a change is not just about what you want, but about knowing what it would take to make the change. Number 3, analyzing the risk isn't just looking at the negative side, it's actually responsible. Number 4, comparing where you are to where you want to be can help you define your goals. Number 5, change can come in all forms, from changing attitudes and mindset to changing careers, relationships, etc. Number 6, assessing risk is asking yourself, what is the distance between average and great, and what is the cost to get there versus what is the cost of not getting there? So your homework is to take some time and consider the change that you are wanting to make and ask yourself, what is your current state and what is the risk of doing nothing versus making that change? I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like it, please take the time to follow and like us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you know someone that may benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with a friend. Thank you so much for listening.